There are calls for urgent changes in the law to protect children against emotional abuse following a huge rise in the number of calls to charity helplines. The NSPCC says it took 8,000 calls last year. Two-thirds were serious enough to be referred to police and social services. Cordelia Kretschmar is at an NSPCC call centre in Salford. So, Cordelia, what would these campaigners ideally like?
Well, they want a change in the law, plain and simple, making emotional abuse and neglect a criminal offence. Now, the government's already been thinking about this, but the spike in the number of calls they've been getting at the NSPCC helpline is only going to add to pressure on them. And, you know, half the calls they've had overnight here, as we've been here, have had some element of emotional neglect. We're talking about real children all over the country. The details are all very different, but they all have something in common. Parents who are consistently denying them love and affection. There are no bruises or broken bones, but the lasting damage of emotional abuse is finally being recognised. Jess, whose name and voice we've changed, went through her childhood without any hugs or I love yous.
I was told as long as I can remember that I had ruined my parents' life by being born, and I grew up believing that. I progressed into self-harm, deep depression and suicide attempts.
The NSPCC's helpline has received 8,000 calls this year about suspected emotional abuse. Nearly 5,500 were so serious they needed to be investigated by the authorities. That's a 50% increase since last year.
Emotional abuse is as severe as any other form of abuse when it's intentional and when it's persistent over a long time.
The government's now considering a change in the law to bring serious emotional neglect in line with all other forms of child abuse and to allow authorities to take real action against the abusers. Cordelia Kretschmar, Good Morning Britain.